Okay, so we're back into phase number 2 of a recording done here on the 12th of January 2015 in Lynbrook in Atlanta, Georgia. And we're talking with Annie Ellen McCall Fraser, who grew up in Florence, South Carolina. And in the first segment, we talked a little bit about her early life in Florence and what she remembers, and so with her mom and dad. So now we're going to go into the second segment here. So Mom, I forgot to talk about one thing in the first edition of this, and that what memories you have of your grandparents. So your grandmother or grandfather, can you remember them?
Only my grandmother on mother's side, and she was from up north. She was reared up in New England, and when she turned almost 80, Mother brought her down. She had been living in Wilmington. She had sisters and brothers who lived in Wilmington for a period of time. So Grandmother came down from New England and lived in Wilmington for quite a while. And so our connection with my grandmother on mother's side was in Wilmington, North Carolina. Then eventually, when her connections, her brother moved away from Wilmington, mother's brother, she brought grandmother down to live in Florence. My father did a lot of building of houses for rental purposes, and he built a nice little and designed
a little house for her, and she lived there until she passed away.
So she would have income to pay her taxes and whatnot.
Okay, so that's about your grandmothers who you remember on your mom's side.
That's right.
Okay.
My grandmother on my father's side died the year I was born, 1925, 24.
Okay. So we ended up at Queens College, and you're going to parties at Davidson and staying at faculty houses at Davidson. So I want to ask one story about why you were at Queens, and that you came back to Florence on Pearl Harbor or VE Day. That it was written up in the Florence Morning News about an experience of coming back. Do you remember any of those? I can't remember what it is, but there was something when you came back at the end of the war where they were celebrating that, or Pearl Harbor had just started, beginning or the end. Does that ring a bell with you at all? Any of that? I don't recall what it is. We'll come back to that later.
No, you'll have to.
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it later. Okay, so you graduate from Queens, and then you go to Thornwell.
No, I went to New York.
Oh, that's right. So tell us about New York.
Well, I've always had itchy feet to wander, always, and I got that from my mother. She liked to travel better than anything. And so when I finished school, I thought I really did not know much about New York, and I always felt left out when people who were knowledgeable about New York City were together talking. And so I thought, I know what I'd like to do now. I'd like to go to New York for a year. And my mother and my sisters thought I was out of my mind. But I got a friend, a summertime friend from Montreat, daughter of the pastor of a church in Alabama. And we were friends and had been for a long time. And she and I
So both of y'all went up there. And then you had a job there. You were going to... What did you? Not a job, but you went to.
No, I went to school.
Went to school.
Went to Catherine Gibbs Business School. It was the finest business school in the country.
Tell us the story of the first day that you went to Catherine Gibbs.
I was greatly out of place. Those were sophisticated city girls, and they had all been to the elegant boarding schools in the north, and I was almost barefooted right out of South Carolina. I was backwards. I became sophisticated very quickly, somewhat sophisticated. But we rented.
And where were you in New York? You had a.
We were on 113 on the corner on the southwest west corner of 113th Street.
113th and what else?
Apartment on the fourth floor looking.
Yeah, 113th and what? Broadway?
Broadway, yes.
Broadway, okay, 113th at Broadway.
Yeah.
And the building's still there, I think, isn't
It's
it?
still there, but it's been taken over by Columbia University.
Yeah.
And it's a dormitory now.
Okay, so you were there, you went to Catherine Gibbs, secretarial school, and then what?
There was a 1-year course,
Okay.
9-month course.
9-month course, and then
But
what?
the hardest school I've ever been to. I had no idea what I was getting into.
So then you went to, where'd you go from there?
Well, I went to, of all places, to an orphanage in South Carolina because the president of the orphanage was speaking. Mother always kept speakers at our church, and the president of the orphanage was speaking at our church and staying in Mother's home. And at the breakfast table, he said, "Tell me about your children." And she said, "Well, I have one daughter in New York in the secretarial school." Oh, he said, "I need a secretary. You think she might come down?" Mother said, "I don't know, you can ask her." And so he wrote me a letter and said, I need a secretary. Would you come work?
Yeah, so you went down to Thornwell and you were his secretary.
And that's in Clinton, South Carolina.
In Clinton, South Carolina.
And where Presbyterian College is too. There are 3 big things in Clinton: Presbyterian College and Thornwell Orphanage and the South Carolina School for Retarded Children.
Okay. So we're going to end the segment 2 here because we've taken Mom from when she was a young child in Florence, South Carolina, and then we've gone through when she went to Queens College, and now this particular segment has taken us from Queens College through going up to New York City, and now we're down at Thornwell Orphanage in Clinton, South Carolina. So this ends number 2, and so the number 3 segment, we'll start off from where we are right now. See you in a little bit.